Well, good morning. Hope you're Thank you, man. Hope you're doing well this morning. My name is Mike. I'm one of the leaders here at C3KW. And hey, if this is your first time with us, we are pumped that you are in the room, especially if this is your first time in church in a while, maybe your first time in church ever. Be you a seeker, a saint, be you skeptical and cynical, wherever you might be with Jesus, we are pumped that you are here to explore faith, engage with us in the message of Jesus. And today we are concluding a short little teaching series out of the Bible that we're calling Fearless, that's been all about addressing what a bunch of researchers found to be these three kind of modern fears, and how Jesus, we believe, ultimately will silence all of them. And so the first one from a few weeks ago, if you were present with us, was a fear that most of us have heard of, the fear, thanks Sam, appreciate it, known as FOMO, right? I'm sure we've all said that at one point in our life. And it's the fear of missing out. And we said in that week that we dealt with things about coveting and fantasizing with other things when you should be stewarding every moment that God has you planted in, and ultimately the lie of God's kind of lack of provision that we need to get over and recognize our good Father giving us all that we need, our daily bread for life. And then last week, if you were here, we dealt with a fear that's maybe a little bit lesser known by its name given by the researchers, but we probably all know some of it. It was the fear of not being amazing, which I said I believe is actually more along the lines of the fear of rejection due to failure. And we've all kind of felt that before, and so we dealt with things like identity and security and how we live as Christians from the place of our identity as sons and daughters, not to form our identity, negotiating with value judgments from people and voices in the world around us. And today we come to the last fear out of this research, and to be honest, it's a little bit elusive. It's a little bit kind of futuristic. It's vague. It's this kind of hard to get a grasp on a little bit, but it's an interesting one. And the thing about it is every time I talk to someone in life that I can sense this fear in them, it's coming from a different angle, which makes this a very wide sermon to try to deal with. But I think it's going to be good for us today. And it's this: it's the fear of passionless monotony. That's the fear that they identified. And it's this fear that looks to the future. It's a very future-oriented fear. And all it sees is kind of bleak, that the best days are behind me, that I peaked in college kind of a thing, that the grown-up life is just kind of wrinkling and boring work and commitments and blah, 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 blah. Or just, it's just this thought that what is ahead of me is just mundane, boring, whatever, and I want to avoid all that as I can. And what it begins to do is it sort of shapes how we view things like purpose and mission in life. So I want to deal with that because I think Jesus actually has some great things to say on this. So if you've got a Bible, if you want to open up to the book of Colossians, we're going to be in chapter 3. We're actually picking up where we left off last week in chapter 3. We read a bunch of it, but today we're going to read the last verse that we read last week, verse 17. If you don't have a Bible, it's all right. We do have some at the back that you can get to keep, I believe, and then even it will be on the screen behind me in just a moment. So this is verse 17 of chapter 3, and this is what Paul says. He says this: "And whatever you do, be it in word or deed, do everything." Can someone say everything? Everything. In the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through Him. Everything we do to the name of Jesus. Let's pray. God, we thank you for your word. I do pray that you would truly speak to us, form us, shape us in it. I pray that you would just use the gifts you've given me, Holy Spirit, for the glory of your name, the good of this church, and use them any way you want to in this moment. Teach us, correct us, exhort us, encourage us, Father. We do invite you to do that very thing. We pray in the next few moments, truly, that your kingdom would come and your will is done. And anything in my heart and my mind, God, that's not from you or by you, would you just quiet today, that we can be truly receptive to what you have for us. And Father, we do pray for a blessing for our Raptors, because you know they got a game tonight. We pray everything. Amen. Amen. Here's the thing. Okay. This may sound a bit ridiculous coming from a 29-year-old human being. All right? But just come with me for a second, right? I have had a midlife crisis. I'm not kidding, right? I know we might think, well, you're a little bit young for that. So you can call it a quarter-life crisis if you would like, which interestingly enough, researchers are actually starting to do that. It's a rising phenomenon amongst people about my age, that around 25 years old, they have this quarter-life crisis after being in the workforce for a couple of years. And the thing is, I had one because I always knew, I just felt called to be a pastor. It was kind of like my plan all the time from a very young age. Around 11 years old, I kind of felt that calling. So I was always planning in that direction. And I know that's not everybody's story, but that is mine. I really felt the call of God in this way. But the thing about that is I had this kind of arbitrary plan in place. I don't really know where it came from or why I developed it, but I had a plan that by age 22, right, the ripe old age of 22, I wanted to be married and leading a church, right? Because clearly wisdom was guiding my life at that point. But here's the thing. I tend to be both competitive and ambitious. And so I did just that. At 22, I married my wife. She was 19. We got married young, and I love it. I'm glad that we got married young. But I also, 3 weeks after that wedding, took charge of a church here in KW as the lead pastor of that church. And obviously at the beginning, it was exciting. It's honeymoon phases all around, new church, new marriage, leadership. I get to preach every week. It's wonderful. The problem was it was way harder than my heart believed. Right? Like my mind knew marriage is hard, life is hard, pastoring, leadership, ministry, people, it's difficult. I knew that. But my heart thought, well, this is what I'm passionate about. This is what I want to do. I'm called, I'm arriving. God's on my team. I'm going to slay this. Because I had not lived long enough to know how foolish that was, right? And the thing was, as a 22-year-old kid, I'm there doing all this stuff. And after a couple years, right, the honeymoon phases wear off. Right? The exciting becomes the routine. And I remember being there. I was about 25 years old, standing in the foyer of this church, looking out the window, and literally just thinking, is this it? Have I peaked at 25? I was in this moment where I thought both that I felt like I was 85 years old, like I lived my whole life and there's nothing more for me, and 15 at the same time. I'm like, there's so much more, but I have nothing more than what I have. And I was just in this weird kind of crisis moment. And what I realized happened was a very interesting thing, is that there became a disconnect between my subjective feeling of passion and the conviction of my purpose. And when that happened, I began to believe that because I felt passionless, I was all of a sudden purposeless, and there's nothing more ahead of me. And I feel like this is something that we need to address for all of us, because whether or not you're like the 25-year-old Mike in that moment of a couple years in, the naivety of the new job is worn off, or maybe you're in college looking at the future and all you see is like endless pain, right? Or maybe you're at that midlife point where you've been doing work for a couple decades. You're like, man, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Maybe you're empty nesters. Maybe you're actually the age of retirement. Here's the thing. At every significant stage of life, when it comes to things like vocation and meaning and whatnot, there seems to be questions around passion, potential, and purpose. And Jesus actually has some good opinions on those things. Right? In a way, I would argue that secular kind of individualistic culture can never actually give us. And I want to show us this a little bit today. And so here's the thing. This whole fear of passionless monotony that apparently is striking the hearts of young people today is a very interesting one, because it comes from the perspective, basically, as I mentioned, of younger people and even some older people looking ahead with zero optimism, basically. Right? It's without this kind of what I would call Christian redemptive optimism that looks to the future and sees what God can do. All we look to is we just see blah and bleak, and literally people have reported, right, that like my high school days were the best ones and everything else is bad. Right? What people found was that a lot of younger people look to the future and literally all they see is wrinkles, so I'm less beautiful, right? Boring job, so I'm less free, and commitment, so I can't spend the money the way that I want to. And there's this view of life that I have to avoid all of those different things. And then the problem is we as young people tend to look and we see all the financial pressures. We see the fact that, we can't get the kind of quality job we used to be able to get. The housing is so much more expensive than it used to be. It's harder to start my adult life in those kind of financial ways. And all we begin to see is find a job to survive and not necessarily to thrive in any way. And we begin to kind of just dread the grind that is to come, because we're also told in culture a certain story. Maybe you've heard this story, right? That the way life works is you go to high school, you get good enough grades to get into college, to get a good degree, to get a good career, to find a spouse, to buy a home, to have a couple kids, to work a lot, to retire, and then to die. And that's the story. So your life is already written for you. You just got to check off the boxes, make your way down the line. The problem is some of us actually believe that's the goal. right? That the goal is to get the good job, to work, save, and then retire in Florida, sipping my OJ, my blood pressure pills, talking about bad prime ministers on the beach with all my boys, right? Like, that's what we think, right? And the problem is both of those stories are not biblical ones. Right? Be it the kind of dread of the future, be it the kind of the goal-oriented towards retirement, those stories do not develop from an honest reading of following Jesus. They develop from a very individualistic, materialistic, secular, immanent worldview that just sees me as the center of everything. Because, I don't know if you know this, but retirement in the Bible is basically death. Moses, his retirement plan, he died. Well, God took him, right? David died. Jesus died and then rose again, and he's obviously king of the universe. But, right, the thing is there's a few hints of like the priest aging out, but beyond that, you don't all of a sudden stop because you get old being called by God. Right? That old doesn't mean purposeless anymore. Why? Because every breath that a human being breathes, be you 6 or 65, 8 or 200, I don't care, is potent with the purpose of God. There's not one image bearer on earth, be you redeemed or fallen, that is not some on-purpose being that was a divine idea made material, not by accident, but by God's divine choice for right now. We do believe that. Now, the problem is this, right? Is in the current culture, we see these stories of retirement, of grind it out, and then there is this opposite one, a third story, or I guess a fourth one when you consider the biblical one, that is also a lie that says, I don't want that kind of grind. I don't want to just go to an office every day and work for nothing. I don't want to trade my time. I want flex hours. I want to have a travel blog on Instagram and take advertising money to go around the world and never stay in it. Like, we just have this, I don't want to be tied down. I want to just sort of do my own thing. And the problem is that one is also a lie. Because it lives in this space of believing that ultimately I'm entitled to something. I'm entitled to an easy, pleasure-filled, passion-filled life. And here's the thing, those things aren't bad, but when I feel like I am entitled to it, when I feel like I deserve it. Because here's the thing about a prosperous culture that you and I live in, right? We live in the West. It's a great place. We are a prosperous nation, right? That can breed a lazy entitlement in us. It just can, right? Just look at culture. We see it today. And what begins to happen is we begin to believe the story that says, if I'm not passionate about this thing, if I don't feel something, then I don't have to do it. That if it doesn't bring me pleasure, make me feel good, whatever, then that I have permission to really move on. That in fact, above even the layers of responsibility, productivity, stewardship, right, even above the ethical sometimes, passion becomes the only consideration for my duty. And the problem with that is that it leaves us in this place, a very kind of subjective weirdness. Right, that we just kind of can float from thing to thing. And the thing is, I don't think I have to really, prove so hard that this is real. Like, I could probably pick literally almost any modern self-help start your own business book and boil it down, every seminar, to this one line. If you're not passionate, quit. Follow your passion. Like, we literally hear it all the time. If it does not spark joy, throw it out. Right? You know what I'm saying? Go marry Kondo your whole life, right? The problem is, here's the thing, when it comes to shirts, don't spark joy, throw it out, works great. Human beings, though, right, aren't very good at dividing out realms of life. And what I mean by that is this. We are what some would call schematic thinkers. We're always looking for schemas and patterns and ways to make decisions easier, to navigate life in a very quick way. And so what begins to happen is with human beings, when we discover there's a good pattern here, we tend to apply it down the line. So here's what happens. If I begin to believe that I can just, spark joy or throw it out when it comes to my stuff, well, how about to my relationships? How about to the spiritual? How about to the vocational? And we actually do that, because what happens? What happens if my spouse no longer sparks joy? Do I let her go? Well, funny thing, because culture says yes. We actually live at that time right now, right? Most of us end in divorce, right? What happens if kids don't spark joy? I'm just not living my life. I became a mom so young, and now I got to go explore myself again. What happens if the baby in my womb does not spark joy? What happens if my job, my community, my friends, what if do we just move on? The problem is we live in a time that says, actually, yes, because it's all about you and your subjective desire to spark joy. And here's what this happens. Okay, this is why it's not only a lie, but it's so destructive. Right? Because hopefully you can see even in that how relationally destructive that is, how vocationally destructive that is, but actually even existentially to your joy, because what you've just done is attach joy that's craving more to things that are finite and temporary. When we just dealt with in week 1, if you were here, right, FOMO, that at the hand of God, there are eternal joys forever. Right? So I actually can have the joy I want from Him, not from this stuff. And where this begins to go, if I begin believing, right, this subtle thing, which, by the way, Christians, you believe, you're part of secular culture, then what happens is I begin telling myself that it is my job to live my best life. YOLO it up, right? Which usually is defined, if you track through culture and Instagram, things like that, right? It's this: no restraints, do what you want, don't let anyone tell you no, and if anyone tries to stop you or hinder your potential, that is an oppressive evil to get away from. You know, God forbid, he make demands on your money. Or that the church would actually ask for some time. Silent. Right? Now here's the thing: is I don't want to caricature this opinion, but this is literally the conversation I have all the time with people today. Right? And so I want to honestly deal with it and give some better theology, some better ideas, and hopefully through Jesus see that there's something greater for our life. And so with that, we come to Colossians 3, right, where Paul, he's just written this whole thing about who you are, that you are a chosen one, a holy one, a loved one of God. Therefore, do everything that you do. Here's how you go and live. You live for ultimately the name or the glory of Jesus, which means this, Christians, right? You can basically boil my sermon down to this one line: everything you do is full of purpose because it's to make much of Jesus. Like we are told, whatever, it doesn't matter what it is, we are told to do it in the name of Jesus, to the glory of God, making much of the grace that saved me, and giving thanks to the Father who's given me the skills and the ability and the breath to do what I do. That's what our calling ultimately is. At any point, in any moment, I can tell you there's purpose in that space. Now, here's the question, though, because whether you're a saint, whether you're skeptical, seeker, secular, I don't care what you're religious, here's the thing: every one of us live life in the name of somebody. The question is, who are you living life in the name of? Right? For some of us, it's the name of the person that judges us, like we talked about last week. That father, that friend, that boss, whatever it might be. I'm living actually after their glory. When they get happy, when they get much, I'm good. Most of us, if we're going to be honest, live for the name of myself. Right? That we do what we do to build my resume, to build my idea, to build me, to make much of me, to have my needs met and my wants met. And I'll take care of numero uno, and that's them. Then maybe I'll take care of you. I got to worry about me. I got to spark my joy. Right? We never talk about sparking other people's joy. It's always my joy, right? This is how we tend to live. And even Christians, can we be honest? Right? Like we will say, no, I'm all about Jesus, and then your life looks indistinguishable from culture. So you can tell me all you want, you're a Leafs fan, but if you're walking around with a Sens jersey on, you got some issues. I think. I don't really follow hockey, I just guessed, right? The same thing happens in us. Like we will rock the jersey of Jesus and then live like we love ourselves. Whose name are you living for? Because in this way, what we have is that every single moment of our life ultimately becomes a moment to make much of Him. That we can look beyond the monotony of what might be there and recognize there's actually purpose in all these things. That whatever I do, right, this becomes a moment of glory for God, which means this, follow me. Right? If it's glory for God, it means it is worship. And where there is worship, there should never be passionless monotony unless your worship sucks. I didn't mean to say that, but I did. Right? Because if our worship is passionless, then what you do will be that. Because if I don't see work as worship, then that means most of my life is just this neutral blah existence. No, I'm a Christian. Everything I do is lived in the worship of God, which means this: I'm always living from the place of eternal joy and eternal praise, which is what secular culture cannot give me. Why? Because in secular culture, what we live in is called the immanent frame. Everything is underneath the sun. It's all within my reference, the material, the individual, within what I can understand. But as a Christian, I get access to that which is transcendent, an eternal joy, a greater pleasure, an understanding of glory that the Spirit of God is in me, living me, empowering me to make much of Jesus to the glory of God. I have access to a joy that culture can't even know. It's who we are. It's who we are. But Mike, you don't know my boss. I don't care. Everything we do to the glory of God. But Mike, it's just a 9-to-5 boring job. Doesn't matter. Whatever you do, glory of God. But Mike, I don't like, it doesn't matter. Whatever you do, to the glory of God. Every breath, every mundane task, every diaper change, every disciplining moment of your child, everything. To the glory of God, my friends. Passionless monotony should not existentially be there for those who walk close to Jesus. Now, Martin Luther King, some of you know him, pretty famous guy. The states just had a day to celebrate him this past week. He was talking to his community, and he was trying to get them to live kind of the best versions of themselves. He has this speech, and I think he actually captures this point so beautifully, and it transfers, again, across time, age, and race. So I want to read it, and just let us think on this for a second. He says this, "And when you discover what you're going to be in life, set out to do it as if God Almighty has called you at this moment in history to do it. If it falls your lot to be a street sweeper, sweep streets like Michelangelo painted pictures. Sweep streets like Beethoven composed music. Sweep streets like Shakespeare wrote poetry. Sweep streets so well that all the hosts of heaven and earth will have to pause and say, 'Here lived a great street sweeper.'" Here's the thing. It's not as if God called you. He did. For such a time as this, God chooses your day and your moment. So whatever you do, as if He did, so do it. Hear me. If for nothing else, right? Don't even consider for a second provision, responsibility, stewardship, contribution, being a good citizen. Just put those aside for a second. At minimum, you've been given your space to make much of Jesus. Everything we do. I pursue excellence in my space. I want to be the best employee where I go. I want to do the best I can do. So Jesus gets made much of. Friends, we have to stop wasting our time navel gazing, right? Just looking at ourselves when you've been called to live a life that makes others want to gaze at God. Can you say that? Now here's the thing. Here's the fun thing. Paul, he says, do whatever you do. Okay, do whatever you do. Now, this might seem subtle to you, but I think it's important for culture. He did not say, do whatever you could do. Notice that? He said, do whatever you actually do that to the glory of God. Why? Because living on purpose is very different than chasing potential. See, this thing that we need to understand, right, is we live in a world that basically says, right, you have unlimited potential. Has anyone ever been told that before? Like, hey, you got so much potential, man. Right? I hate that. If I said that to you, I'm sorry. It's so dumb. Why? Because two things. It's vague, number one. It's kind of very inspecific and whatever. And number two, it's kind of backhanded. Right? Because basically what they're saying is, hey, you're not really living up to the value judgment I've made on your life right now. Thank you. Sure. Right? Because potential it's just this vague picture of what could be. Right? Plus the fact that potential, because of that, it's limitless. Like I have the potential to do a lot of different things, including dumb ones, right? And bad ones. But the problem with culture today is it says, because you're not really tied to anything, and meaning becomes literally arbitrary based on your current moment, then limitless potential is what you actually want to have. You don't want anyone to restrict your options. You never want to be told you cannot do something, you should not do something. It's this limitless place of ever-growing opportunity. The problem as human beings is we know that's stupid, but it feels good. How do we know it's stupid? Here's the thing. Most good things in life require the restrictions of my potential. Right? Think about this for a second. Marriage. Okay? The moment I say I do to my wife, my pond shrinks. I got one fish in it, and I don't always catch that one. You know what I'm saying? Right? Don't always. I try. I'm not the best fisherman, right? But it's worth it, is it not? Right? For the love, the commitment, the intimacy, the partnership. The funny thing about culture is they want the love without the restriction, and that's the problem, right? They don't want to be bound by any commitment, but that's the problem. Love in its nature is a covenantal commitment to the good of something, right? Or how about children, right? Children, they limit my potential freedoms of money, of time, of emotional health, right? They do that, and it's worth it. Hopefully in 20 years. But right now, right, I'm convincing myself, I'm just kidding. Children are a blessing of the Lord. The Bible says that, right? Or how about just this? How about community? How about church? Right? It limits my horizons. It demands of my time, of my bank account. It demands of my sacrifice. But well, what do I gain? Family, friendship, intimacy, partnership. I get mission. These things are worth it. And here's the thing I want you to get to your heart today, friends. God will not hold you accountable to your potential, but to your purpose. He's not going to make you stand and give an account for all you could have been, but for who He's called you to be. The wife, the husband, the marriage, the family, the kids, the church, the community, the job, the skills, the talents that He's given you. That is what He will hold you accountable to. If you're here today just chasing the potential, chasing the freedom, chasing the lack of restrictions, wanting that kind of life, hear me today, what you'll find is anxiety and stress. Because if you're never planted, if you're never rooted, you'll always be wandering, and you'll always actually find that because of limitless options, decision fatigue sets in, and actually option anxiety sets in. Because what if I choose the bad one? What if I go? And the funny thing about Christians is we've actually taken that same idea and applied it to the will of God. Right? When we begin talking about things like what's my specific purpose? I don't want to miss it. Hear me today. God is so sovereign, so good, you will not miss your purpose if you follow Him. Okay? So I want to give 4 quick things just to think about, or to discover your purpose in Jesus. Number 1 is this. Just live life according to the values of Jesus. Nothing spectacular about that. Just live life according to His values, which implies, obviously, that you know them, Christians, that you're in them, that you're considering the Sermon on the Mount, the letters of Paul, the way that God moved. You're actually doing the disciplines of faith to know those things. Number 2 is you're in a faith community of people who know you, who love you, who are for you, and want to call out the best in you, who can say, hey, I don't know if you're gifted in this area, or hey, this is a God-given passion. You should pursue this. Because, by the way, I should have said this earlier, passion's not the issue. Right? That's not the issue at all. I don't want to make bad on passion. The issue is misdirected purpose, ultimately. Right? And you need, number 3, to walk with the Spirit close to Jesus in prayer, understanding Him. And then number 4, just do the next right thing you know what to do. Just go in that system, and God will bring you to your purpose. Right? Like, it doesn't have to be that much more complicated. Now, here's the thing. Is I, as a Christian, actually, I'll say that I, as a human being, right, we would much rather live a life on purpose, planted where God has me, right, than shallowly just existing everywhere else. That one seems more free. This one seems more fulfilling. Because where you're planted, you will find purpose. Can I encourage you in that? Now, here's the thing, okay? We have to go to this next thing because sometimes I get it. I get it. That, purpose in the talk of calling seems often somewhat generic. Can we be real? Right? Everyone has a purpose. It's true enough, right? That everyone's called by God. True enough, right? But sometimes it's like, okay, what does that matter then for tomorrow, right? Not to mention the glory that we already talked about, but I want to say this to every single person in the room today. If you are a Christian in the room today, right? You never wake up. You never breathe a breath that is not fully directed by the sending mission of God. Hey, I want you to get, Jesus gave us all. If you're a Christian, if you're not a Christian in the room, then this doesn't necessarily apply to you, but it might hopefully inspire you. But Jesus, right, gave us this little thing called the Great Commission, right? The great commissioning of the church, the great birthplace of His people, the great tasking, the great purpose of the Christian life. And maybe you know a little bit about it, right? To go and make disciples, right? To go and live every moment to teach people about Jesus, to teach them how to obey Him and love Him and serve Him, to bring hope to a hopeless place, to build the church, which is the avenue of mission that God has chosen to use, as crazy and messed up as we are sometimes. This is what you're called to do, that every breath you breathe is sent by God so you might be on mission to bring hope to a world that needs it. This is actually who we are. There's not a moment you wake up that you are not sent by Jesus. Right? If you live like that, you might want to check where your heart is with the mission of God. You have been enlisted into something bigger than yourself. That every moment, every task, every job, every gifting, I steward it for the glory of God, to serve people, to love this world, to be about the church, to build God's kingdom. This is everything that we do from now until the day that we die. Every single day is full of purpose because I'm always on mission. If you miss this point, you'll always be searching as a Christian for your purpose. Always, right? And people will come and will say, but Mike, you don't get it. I'm just going to the grind. I'm just going to my 9-to-5 job. Listen to me. I don't care if it's 9-to-5 job in some concrete jungle, capital, whatever. Listen to me. What that is the mission field of your workplace, right? That you're going to work with people every day who are hungry for community, hungry for connection, hungry for hope, in need of Jesus. We have the greatest message alive. And I'm going to sit there and be all, I'm glad I edited myself. Be all, hung up and strung up, right? When we got hope for the person who's just trying to get by. Like here's the thing, right? I don't care if it's that, or how about Tim Hortons, right? We go and we work at Tim Hortons, some of us or whatever. Guess what? That is not just a donut cafe. What that is, right, is a coffee-centered Jesus connection. Because when I show up, the purpose of God shows up. And when I walk in the room, guess what comes with me? Mission, Jesus, hope, love, excellence, peace, patience, kindness. I'm the best donut maker ever, and I'm going to smile at you and let you know that He is good. I don't care what you do. The mission field is my life. So how could I ever have passionless monotony when I've been called to a mission? And the problem with Christians is we are so about sparking my joy, I actually forget Jesus. And if you're not a Christian here today, welcome to Mike. This is how I didn't do it. Right? But this is the point where we have to get our life around, that the life that you live is not for you. You've been elected and saved, chosen and raised to be on mission now in the church. And by the way, it is a mission worth giving my life for. That Jesus would take momentary acts of love, the things that I call mundane and monotonous, and do actual eternal miracles in somebody. Like this is not just some drive-by cause on Twitter, you know what I'm saying? Right, where everyone hashtags for 2 months and no one forgets about it anymore. Right, this is actually an eternal thing. King Jesus using my life to make much of Him that somebody else who actually needs Him. Guys, here, I know this might just seem hyperbolic, but it's actually true, right? There is sin in our city. Jesus is real. Hell and heaven are a real reality, so we have work to do. So how dare I get up and be like, I'm bored today. Shut up. Get on mission. Stop playing games, and let's do something with our life for a second. Here's the problem. Some of us will get all hyped up because I'm hyped. And then we'll still not serve, still not give, and still not get in a connect group. So I'm just going to say this. If you are part of our church and you've been here for more than a week, right? More than a week, I'm giving you a week, and you love Jesus, and you're not giving, and you're not serving, and you're not actually part of the community, can I challenge you today? You need to go home, look in the mirror, and figure out whose jersey you're wearing. People are dying. Our understanding of the world leaves us in a place where we are the ones who God has chosen to bring hope. And I'm going to sit here and just get all bored and blah, blah, blah when I have so much to offer this world. What do you live for? That becomes the question that must drive all of us. What do you actually live for? And here's the thing, and I know I'm saying all this stuff, and I'm trying to be passionate for you guys today and really connect this, but here's the thing is I get it, that even with all the theology, even with all the passion that hopefully God wants to still in your heart, life can still feel monotonous. I get that, right? We go to the same job, drive the same car, it's the same commute, I eat the same meal when I get home. Maybe you should learn how to cook. I'm just saying, spice it up in the kitchen, right? And we have these opportunities. Now, here's the thing I want to say, is that sameness does not mean passion or purposelessness, right? We have to see that. Because here's what I want you to understand. This would be something that I truly believe will actually save a lot of us in this room, especially the young people, a lot of pain in life, okay? That you cannot live off the fumes of passion when you've been made to live off the fuel of purpose. Why? Because passion wanes. I'm not always this hype. Right now, it's great. Tomorrow morning, I might not be, right? Passion goes up and down. But what remains is conviction. Right? Where passion may ebb and flow, what endures is purpose. Here's the thing. Marriage seeker, here's a life hack, right? Marriage seeker. You don't always like your spouse. Right? Like, I'm positive I annoy Emily on the daily, right? Multiple times, right? Every day, right? The passion isn't always honeymoon level forever. But you know what remains consistent? The conviction of a covenant. The fact that I've been called by God to love this woman, that she is the gift of God, that remains even if I'm feeling all crazy over here. Like, guys, sometimes I love being a pastor, and sometimes I hate it. Right? Sometimes I think about going to Walmart and just stacking boxes and stuff, or working at Shopify with my free food and my espresso bar all the time, right? I'd like a nap pod, why not, right? I don't got that, well, I got a bed, but whatever, right? The point being is some days I'm like, I would rather not do this, but the days that I actually feel so in love with pastoring is because I know I have been called and assigned by God. What remains is a conviction that even if I hate this job, I'm called to it. This is what we have to understand is that, yes, if the grace lifts, if the permission changes, then yes, I will walk in that. But as long as the grace remains, the conviction is here, the calling is present, that's what we live in, and that's where we go. So yes, even if it feels monotonous, I'm going to own the feeling. It's there. Even if it feels boring, sometimes work sucks. I get it. Even in those places, I am still sent by God to make much of Him and do good for the world. This is who we are. So it doesn't matter how we always feel. Passionless monotony should never strike fear into the heart of one living with the fervor of mission. Like, this is so much bigger than me. The kingdom of God, the eternal kingdom of God that will outlast every kingdom of this world, every king and name, every gaming score I can get to, follower counts and bank. More than all of these things, there is one that will remain, and His name is Jesus. And this is the thing that you are called to give your life, to give your money, to give your time, to give your skills, to give your breath, to make much of our King. How can there be passionless monotony when this is my calling? This is my calling. Now, there's a story in the Bible that I think captures this so beautifully. And actually, Ben, you guys can come up. I'm going to end with the story. It's a story that you have to understand. It's analogous. Okay, it's not one for one because it is a love story, right? And maybe you've heard of the story before. It's a story of Jacob and Rachel, right? Where he goes. It's classic, boy meets girl, boy falls in love with girl. Boy has to work 7 years to earn her hand in marriage from her father, gets tricked on a drunken stupor to marry the wrong sister, apparently the uglier one. That's the Bible, right? Has to work 7 more years to earn her and still gets manipulated, cheated, and duped by the father. Classic love story. I'm sure we've all had that experience before. But the thing about this story is at the first 7 years, the Bible actually makes this one little line in the book of Genesis where it says this, but those years seemed but a few moments for his love for her. That there was something greater than the monotony of a shepherd. Because this was not just like modern world labor. This was not, a tech job. I'm just kidding. Tech jobs are hard. Just kidding. Right? This was like agriculture, shepherding, stinky sheep, hot days, every day smelling the same dumb sheep, right? It said it felt like a few just days to him because there's something deeper in his heart. Now here's the thing. You are Jacob, right? And no, the love is not a love of a woman, right? It's ultimately the love of the world. That this love that drives the Christian heart to make much of Jesus, to bring much to the world. Because we love so much, every mundane moment becomes so much better. Because I've been loved so much, even the most tedious of tasks become just so potent with God's purpose. Friends, we as Christians should never fear passionless monotony because we've been given something deeper. an actual purpose-filled mission to make glory come, to see our city set free, deliverance and healing, wholeness and life, salvation and freedom here. That is your calling. Are you a Christian? That's your calling. Are you a follower of Jesus? That is your calling. Did you wake up today? That's your calling. You're going to wake up tomorrow? That's your calling. To the last breath that I breathe, my life is lived to make much of Jesus. Christians, if you're not on board with that, you might want to check your heart. Like the church is not meant to be some nice little cruise ship for our spirits. It's a battleship for mission. We all got our post, we all got a place, we all got a sacrifice to see Jesus do what he wants to do in us. We do all we can do so he can do all that he can do. If you're here today and you are a Christian, can I just ask you this simple question, seriously? Do you live more to spark joy or to glorify Jesus? Is the decision factor of your life indistinguishable from secular culture? Or do you make decisions and pursue passions and use your giftings from a different place? Do you rob God of what is his in your life so you can make much of your own name? Christians, if you're here today and that sounds like you, I need to call you to a place of repentance, to change the mind, to change the heart. Jesus actually has a better way for your life, truly. The question will be, who will you follow? Who will you follow? Can we just stop living for ourselves for a bit? Like, we have to remind ourselves sometimes, guys, that like, we got 70 years, 80 years here. Technology maybe 90, sure. I have eternity with Jesus. Like, I think I can give 90 out of that to make much of him. I think I can give 70 out of that to just sacrifice. I don't need no mansion. I got one in heaven. Right? Like we have to begin to see our life differently. We will just be a nice little family community unless we get our life on mission for Jesus. Will he come back and look at our church and say, here, we're a bunch of joy sparkers, or the kind of street sweepers that MLK talks about? Will he come back and look at our church even now and say, hey, this is a church that knows their first love, that recognizes their mission, that gives like no other? I would say, hey, there's a church that used to know those things. I never want to be that church. I never want to be that church. And so Christians, take consideration of your life. Take account of your heart. See how you live. And I pray it'd be for Jesus. If you're here today and you aren't a Christian, can I just say this to you very, very plainly and clearly, that at the end of the day, Jesus, I do believe this. That's such a better life and vision for you. The thing about our life is nothing is neutral, right? Like nothing is just for me. Every selfish act we as Christians know before God is sin. Why? Because ultimately there's only two ways to do life. There's where Jesus is king or where I am. And so though it might just seem right and feel right and pull this way, the end of the day, right, his will for your life is to see you whole, set free, made alive by the forgiveness of sin, by calling you into the kingdom of heaven. If you would come to him today, I know it might seem like a restriction. You're king now, I'm not. But what opens up is actual freedom. The healing of your soul, the forgiving of your sins, and ultimately the taking of your shame. And this is our power, chosen, holy, and beloved by God, but only for those willing to restrict their freedom to serve the King. He died on a cross 2,000 years ago to forgive us of every act of bitterness, every act of brokenness, every act of selfishness, and every sin that exists in our heart, that we would never have to live with them again. If you're here today and you know your life is being lived for yourself, you know your life is actually chasing emptiness, days that are to come, find wholeness, life, and freedom in Him. And I want to call you to that. I would love to have a conversation about that, honestly. But this could be a day where everything changes. Amen? Would you say everything I want to pray for our church?